Hi everyone, I'm Andy. This is Nathan, Mahmood, Stefano and Max, and together we created Pocket PA. So Pocket PA is an app that's based to try to streamline booking business transport. It's aimed at sort of professionals who have a lot of external meetings. The way we sort of aim to streamline the process is we integrate with the Google Calendar to get all your event data. We can then use that data to actually search and find your transport for that particular meeting, any meeting in your calendar. I'm going to pass you over to Nathan, who's going to run through the app and sort of the full demonstration of how the app actually works.
All right, thank you, Andy. So obviously, as Andy's introduced, our app is called Pocket PA. Once the demo starts. Sorry about this. Seems we're having technical difficulties. Okay, so since we can't actually get it working, I'll give you an overview of the idea of our app and how we wanted it to work. Initially, when you load up our app, it gives you the ability to have the option to sign in, and how we wanted this to sign in was through your Gmail. So once then you have Gmail, it brings up a redirect which goes into the Gmail window, and you put in your email if you haven't already put the email in already, which then obviously signs you in from there. Hey, there we go. All right, so there, now. All right, there we go. So we're on track as I was explaining. So we go through to Gmail, the email, which is already registered there. Here we have the ability to enter information. This is like the home and station and other information like that as well, which we use later in our app. You just briefly saw the profile page, and this is our events screen, which pulls information from our API from the back end. On the events, this section itself is all the events that the user has not actually handled in terms of that they've not booked any travel information for. So like we go into an individual one, and you have the ability to select like if you're going from your home or your office, but then we've got the outgoing transport and also the return transport, which updates based on the location of where you are. After you've obviously chose the location of which way, where you want to go from, you can click the book transport, which will then give you another redirect to National Rail, which will give you the option to choose which one you want and then book and go from there. Once we've got past this screen, it then goes back into our application, and it should redirect you back to the carousel, which then, after going through, you can find the one which is should be the London one. And once we get to the London one, there we go. You can click on it, and it shows you all the information that you would have when you are traveling to that destination, the outgoing transport, the return journey, which gives you then a brief paragraph about each. Again, you've got the days and how many days it's due or until then. And the last part, which is where you sign out and takes you back to the login screen. There you go. I'll pass you on to Mahmood, who will explain a bit more information about how all of this works.
So to choose a technology in the front end to represent our idea, we went with React Native, and mainly because React Native built a real native experience for mobile phones, and it's also it has a lot of similarities with React, which we are familiar with, like how informations travel between the components, or like lifecycle hooks and state, but it's also a bit different because you're building an application for mobile phone. So React Native is different in this way. We also decided to build our native app with Expo. And Expo is a great tool which is the way it bundles JavaScript code into a native code is quite good. And also it comes with an easy use modules that helps you a lot while you're building your application. Like for example, we used auth sessions to authenticate with Google, and we used link to view the links nicely in our app without the user have to leave the application. And also we used other modules, for example, from React Native itself, like we used async storage, which is kind of like local storage for JavaScript, which you can actually use the application offline. That is very, very, very good with React Native. A navigation with React, and I bet everyone who worked with React Native, he mentioned the navigation, because the issue is React itself, it ships without navigation tools. So you have to rely on libraries to use navigation in React. And people does not realize that until late. But what was actually the advice from previous groups, we started with the navigation, and that was great. We were about to choose, for example, a router flux, but we chose React navigation instead. The issue we had with React navigation is that React navigation, it changes from, it's basically like 3 versions now. So version 1 and version 2 are completely different, and version 3 are completely different too. So we ended up following Northcoders' idea about reading the docs, but we actually were reading the wrong docs. So we trying to code with version 2 syntax while version 3 installed in our machine, which didn't work. We spent hours trying to figure out why. That's the issue. But React navigation is a very great tool, and it helps you to move the props between the screens, between your components. Last thing I want to say is that when designing this app, we from the start wanted a very polished app. Like any app you go for iPhone. So we put the user experience in our mind. So we started with building right away, building mockups, trying the navigation, try different navigations. Ways to navigate through the screens. We used dummy data, kind of like the data we expect the backend will give to us by the end of the week. So we started to pass this dummy data and started to visualize the flow of data between the components. And that helped us to build a very strong component structure, and which is very important with React. React and React Native. So with that in mind, we build an application we actually very proud of, because things like heavily navigating between something like a scroll view, which is a mobile thing. So it's affect heavily the bridge, where React Native got something called a bridge, which is bundles the data, the JavaScript code into a native code. So something like a scroll view will affect the data flow, and Expo and the structure of the components help to see a very fluid experience. So thank you guys, and now I will pass you to Max, who will take you through the server side. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Hi guys, everyone, I'm Max, and I had the pleasure of working with Stefano on the back end. The point of our, yeah, no, it sounds worse every time I say it. The purpose of our backend was to make data as easily accessible to the front end as possible. That didn't make sense, but we wanted to make it, we wanted to retrieve it as fast as possible with the least amount of user input. We used a variety of libraries and packages, which I'm going to talk through with you now. We used the express.js framework. This meant we spent less time worrying about the configuration of the server and more time focusing on the actual logic behind it. We decided to use the Google Calendar API because it's the most widely used. And this meant we could really easily integrate it with the Google Directions API, which did all of our processing for us later. With the Google Calendar API, we could find all the meeting times for the users, and using that, we could put it into the Directions API and find you a train that get you to your location on time with time to spare, including delays. Because the point of our backend, we wanted to use as little API calls as possible. We decided to integrate a database. Going with a Google theme, we decided to use Google's Firebase, which meant each time we wanted to see an event, we didn't have to call it and then process it all, but instead we'd do it only once, store in the database, and we could get that all back in one go. Last of all, we had an issue with the National Rail API. They didn't give it to us, so we had to find a workaround with that. We worked out how their URL worked, and Stefano worked out how the URL worked. We managed to get all the details, put in URL, and generate a booking link, which we could render to the front end, so you could book your train. Now I'm going to pass you over to Stefano, who's going to talk about the problems we encountered.
Thank you. It was very pleasure to work with you too, Mark. It's awkward. My name is Stefano, and right, as you can see, right, that we were us, as you can see, and that massive challenge, guys, signing with Google. You might think it's easy. Every time you watch a website, like, oh, signing in Google, easy, right? No. Right, you got so many issues. I'm not surprised because, for security reason, every time it gives it back this credential object, every time was refreshing it. So we weren't able on the back end to grab that object and send it back. And also, if you like, the documentation was quite confusing, right? And if you end up like, all right, I'm gonna check on it, I'm gonna check some tutorial, I'm sure we'll find it. No, because they're all out of date, because Google is keeping refreshing the new one. So that talks a while. I had a big headache on the group. Eventually we did. And also on the backend side, well, problem, like we got the APIs, we had to choose the right one. And if you have to be honest, you have to use the one with the credit card. Thank you, Max. And I mean, they'd be very generous at the amount of money they give it to you on the start, so we didn't spend any money. But, just keep in mind, if you are looking for an API, it's better to use the credit card. But most importantly, what we learned. What we learned, guys, we learned a lot. It was so important. Like, first, whoever thought, like you now, guys, like, oh my God, I'm gonna smash it. I got 2 weeks. I'm gonna do it. Probably better than yours. And that's good attitude. But you realize you don't have much time, as everyone probably said. And it's so important. For that reason, it's so important to have a daily stand-ups, daily talking. Like, literally in the morning we started, guys, where are we going? Where are we going? And even after lunch, even in the evening, I'm sorry, but even sometimes in the bathroom with Mahmoud, we are talking like, where are we going? It's so important, guys. Keep updated, talking on Trello, message on WhatsApp at night. It's so helpful. And, I'm a huge believer of pair programming, right? Because the other person always spots errors that you're never gonna think you're gonna find it. And yeah, it's so important, guys, pair programming. Like, don't underestimate it. I'm a huge believer. Like, even when sometimes you're demotivated, like, all right, guys, we're not going the right direction. It's not what we're doing. Like, the other person, it's fine, we can do it. And you keep going until eventually. So I would like to say, teamwork is the key. You have to keep in touch. You can never ever, what's possible for me and myself or on my own or none of them, deliver this product. So seriously, guys, do a massive, huge clap for us because teamwork always win. Thank you. If you got any questions, here we are.